The Edge Bevel Integrity Continuum, copyright 2008 through 2024 by Dr. Sean A. Sinfrano, all rights reserved. The Edge Bevel Integrity Continuum, so simple a caveman can understand it. Table of Contents, Chapter 1, PS, Perceived Sharpness versus EBI, Edge Bevel Integrity, Sharp Broadheads Suck. Page 2. Chapter 2, EBI Continuum Introduction, page 7. Chapter 3, Shortening Broadhead equals Increased EBI, page 9. Chapter 4, Increasing Blade Thickness equals Increased EBI, page 14. Chapter 5, Increasing Bevel Degree equals Increased EBI, page 20. Chapter 6, Adding Plane Mechanical Cutting equals Increased EBI and Increased EBR, Edge Bevel Retention, page 25. Chapter 7, Appropriate Broadhead Application Heat Treatment per Type of Metal for Shock equals Increased EBI, page 30. Appendix 1, Definitions, page 34. Appendix 2, EBI Continuum Picture Book Version, Caveman Crib Notes, page 36. Appendix 3, the Edge Bevel Integrity Continuum, page 43. The Edge Bevel Integrity Continuum, so simple a caveman can understand it. This is the audio book version. To download an ebook version, go to bishoparchery.com and put the ebook in your cart and check out with the ebook. Normally $7.99 for a limited time, completely free. There's many visuals in here, so this audio version would be good to listen to in the background, but leaves out many things because there's a lot of visuals. So make sure you go over to bishoparchery.com and download your free ebook while supplies last for a limited time. Chapter 1, Sharp Broadheads Suck. When you increase 3-to-1 mechanical advantage, several bad things actually happen. So increase 3-to-1 mechanical advantage plus decreases the grain per grain blade thickness, decrease bevel degree, add straight edge cutting, increase overheat treat the wrong metals to knife application levels, equals more PS, perceived sharpness, less SI, structural integrity, less EBI, edge bevel integrity, less RLC, real life cutting in big and dangerous game aero projectile applications. In a nutshell. Okay, chapter 1. Of course, sharp broadheads don't suck. Of course, sharp broadheads don't suck. And this title is somewhat clickbait. But in many ways, the scalpel-sharp broadhead designs of our modern societies are inferior to the EBI, edge bevel integrity capacity, of comparatively dull, thick-bladed primitive archery stone points in our research and development at bishoparchery.com over the years. This is because many of the stone points in our collection have superior EBI, edge bevel integrity, compared to modern premium steel broadheads. This has implications in modern broadhead engineering applications, since the strongest stone is an inferior material for shock resistance applications compared to the softest, wimpiest steels. The proverbial king of real-life aero projectile cutting is EBI, edge bevel integrity, and not broadhead sharpness. Sadly, tiny-minded popular bow hunting culture demands broadheads that are ignorantly engineered to have the ultimate levels of PS, perceived sharpness. Contrary to popular belief, broadhead sharpness is totally irrelevant in aero projectile cutting, as the sharpest broadhead bevel designs in the world go doorknob dull when subjected to a gentle two-finger push into the foam-filled hood of a bow quiver. Imagine how their wimpy, their razor-sharp bevels look like chewed-up bubblegum on a dainty onside rib bone of a modest-sized white-tailed deer. let alone a 2x4 size rib bone of a Cape Buffalo. Why? This is because there's an inverse relationship between EBI, edge bevel integrity, and perceived broadhead sharpness. At bishoparchery.com, we have articulated this relationship internally as the edge bevel integrity continuum for over a decade. I will share some basics of the EBI, edge bevel integrity continuum, that we have used over the years to develop our highly emulated but never duplicated bishoparchery.com broadheads and steel-footed arrow shafts for several years now. How sharp you are able to get the broadhead is totally irrelevant, as many broadhead designs cannot maintain EBI, edge bevel integrity, the moment they impact the hide of a small, soft, whitetail deer at 50 to 500 plus feet per second. At no time do bow hunters daintily hand-push broadheads through hide or make delicate surgeon's scalpel cuts in real-life arrow projectile cutting. At no time do bow hunters slowly hand-cut a bunch of rubber bands or push through a sharpness measuring wire or shave their arm hair when an arrow is traveling from 50 to 500 feet per second to strike body cavities of big game with one pass-through, one test trial. Awesome razor blades, surgeon scalpels, caping knives, fillet knives, and pocket knives offer a smorgasbord of unique attributes to perform specific multiple test trial cutting tasks for humankind. However, all of these types of knives and blades listed above make for horrible broadheads. Horrible. Knives can have hundreds of cutting and resharpening test trial cycles when butchering a single big game animal. Conversely, a broadhead only gets one arrow thrust, one test trial, to penetrate and pass through an animal while retaining EBI, edge bevel integrity, throughout the entire body cavity, as EBR, edge bevel retention, is not possible from any straight edge single bevel or double bevel on Earth when placed into an arrow projectile application. You cannot stop your arrow and resharpen it every inch it travels into the body cavity of an animal like we can with knives when we cape out and quarter up big game. When we butcher animals, we resharpen our straight edge double bevel knives numerous times in one sitting and can afford thin bladed fillet knives with 15-degree double bevels. Even when we use our knives on ball sockets like pry bars, it is dainty and gentle on the tip of the knife blade and on the edge bevel of the knife compared to what we ask broadhead tipped arrows to do on impact of big game at 50 to 500 plus feet per second. The fact is that broadheads are required to work more like shock resistant features found on 60-degree double bevel axes in tool steel composed metal punches, and not like sub 22-degree double bevel scalpels, face shavers, or fillet knives. EBI, edge bevel integrity, and not EBR, edge bevel retention, and for sure not PS, perceived sharpness, is how straight edge single bevel and double bevel broadheads cut big and dangerous game animals when tipped on arrow projectiles in real life. Crossbow, compound bow, and traditional archery bow hunters pursue animals that unduly suffer as modern-day hunters ignorantly chase the sharpest broadhead designs rather than broadheads with the most EBI, edge bevel integrity. All bevel degrees, metals, and blade thicknesses can be brought to shaving sharp, but this is not important because it is the EBI, edge bevel integrity capacity of the broadhead, and not sharpness that is paramount for real-life cutting. Indigenous peoples with mechanical cutting stone points can somehow muster better EBI, edge bevel integrity, than most modern-day premium steel broadhead companies can engineer. It is regurgitated ad nauseum by generations of well-respected bow hunting authorities that scalpel sharpness equals cutting in broadhead applications. But the truth is that sharpness does not equate to much of anything other than in knife applications. Again, the sharpness metric mainly puts an exclamation mark on the ignorance of modern bow hunting societies. Our modern bow hunting society of crossbow, compound bow, and traditional archery hunting experts could be characterized by a vast sea of ignorance that stares into an ignorance abyss of regurgitation. Quote, the most important thing you need is a sharp broadhead. However, this statement is a tiny-minded social phenomenon, as broadhead sharpness means nothing to EBI, edge bevel integrity. If your broadhead goes dull when you slide your arrow into your quiver foam, then it doesn't matter how sharp you can get it on a leather strap or on corrugated cardboard. The broadhead will run dull through the entire big game body cavity at best. At best. At best. At worst, your bevels will look like chewed up bubblegum through the entire body cavity. The minimal question should not be, how sharp does the broadhead come out of the package, or how sharp can you get the broadhead? But rather, how sharp can the broadhead stay when impacting whitetail deer on up through larger size big game, when tipped on the end of a 50 to 500 plus feet per second arrow projectile? And more importantly, what does the broadhead's design, material, heat treatment, and manufacturing process yield for EBI, edge bevel integrity, and thus RLC, real life cutting, when tipped on the end of a big game arrow projectile in an arrow application? Over the years at bishoparchery.com, we have developed and prototyped numerous long and lean 3-to-1 mechanical advantage razor blade 25 degree and sub 25 degree ASSB Ashby style single bevels and thin bladed 15 degree double bevels. They're literally horrible for real life cutting on arrow projectile impacts. This is no knock on Dr. Ashby, as we speculate that he single-handedly got more compound bow hunters than anybody else in modern history to educate them to switch away from rage broadheads to an ASSB Ashby style single bevel, or even some kind of cut-on contact double bevel that all easily have higher EBI edge bevel integrity, SI structural integrity, and pass-through rates than the number one selling broadhead of all time, Rage in the Cage. We are fans of the man, but the Ashby reports are not our Bible at bishoparchery.com, as the actual Bible is our Bible. The way broadhead companies, social media personalities, and foundations regurgitate the original Ashby reports as scripture is as telling as how CNN reports the news. Some Ashby-style single bevels that we made over the years at sub 25 degrees and long and lean 3-to-1 mechanical advantage as the creme de la creme, or is that creme de la creme, of the ideal Ashby report single bevel attributes would edge bevel chatter in foam targets, where bevels would look like chewed up bubblegum. Imagine when they impacted bone or anything else on the planet in a broadhead application for real life cutting at any heat treat, let alone overheat treating to brittleness per material with a high propensities for shattering like glass. Not to mention, long, lean single bevels with 25 degree bevels do not breach bone as well as short, thick bladed 45 degree single bevels with high BMA, bidirectional mechanical advantage. Another thing you all continuously try to copy us at. Everything would be fine if humans used broadheads exclusively as knives and scalpels, but we use them more like axes and metal punches, with knocks flying out of some arrows on vertebrae or even rib bone impacts, let alone on femurs or knuckles. In all arrow projectile cutting applications dating back before Jesus Christ appeared on the historical timeline up through today, from stone points to our modern archery blip on the archery timeline, it is EBI, edge bevel integrity, that leads to real-life cutting by 50 to 500 plus feet per second arrow projectiles into big game, and not broadhead sharpness. To ignite even more controversy, and more importantly, stimulate critical thinking of crossbow, compound bow, and traditional archery bow hunters reading this. Sharpening all bevel degrees, blade thicknesses, and heat treats of various types of metals by modern humans often inadvertently modifies the bevel and ruins the head's EBI, edge bevel integrity. Most modern humans are better off finding the highest edge bevel integrity broadhead for real-life cutting of arrow projectiles at 50 to 500 plus feet per second and leaving the bevels totally unmolested forever. While intentionally engineered convex double bevels and micro bevels can be good, and while we love and adore all our clients at bishoparchery.com, we have literally seen it all over the years. From perfect EBI, edge bevel integrity, where the bevels were either never sharpened or sharpened with old school sharpening skills that all humans used to have, all the way through grossly bellied out single bevels, compound bevels, and single bevels inadvertently turned into double bevels. On double bevels, we have seen our 60-degree three-blade broadheads that a kindergartner could sharpen by swishing around on a flat stone, ignorantly turned into 45-degree bevels on purpose by the end user with a hunting society that chases irrelevant PS, perceived sharpness, while unintentionally diminishing the EBI, edge bevel integrity, that we meticulously engineered into our bishoparchery.com broadheads for real-life cutting. The bishoparchery.com edge bevel integrity continuum, the inverse relationship between EBI, edge bevel integrity, and PS, perceived sharpness, describes a broadhead's ability to perform real-life arrow projectile cutting. This does not mean high EBI, edge bevel integrity broadheads cannot be brought to razor sharpness. It simply means sharpness is not a statistically significant arrow projectile cutting applications of big and larger size game. It might at first seem complex, but it's very simple to understand. In fact, I tried to make it so easy to understand that even a caveman from over 60,000 years ago can wrap their head around it. The inverse relationship between EBI, edge bevel integrity, and PS, perceived sharpness, is highlighted in the EBI continuum as listed below. Now, some of this stuff is visual, so go over to bishoparchery.com and download the ebook. The Edge Bevel Integrity Continuum, Chapter 2, EBI Continuum Introduction. Put in simple terms, where a stone point toting caveman could easily understand it. How broadheads perform real-life cutting when tipped on arrow projectiles, where the regular print in red below equals bad, and where the bold print in green below equals good. This is where you want to go over and download the ebook so you can see the red and the green. Increased edge bevel integrity equals increased real-life cutting of arrow projectiles. The Edge Bevel Integrity Continuum, simplified, authentic bishoparchery.com broadhead engineering basics. EBI, edge bevel integrity, and not PS, perceived sharpness, equals real-life cutting. If you decrease 3-to-1 mechanical advantage, and you increase blade thickness, and you increase the bevel degree, and you add planned static mechanical cutting, and the appropriate heat treat per type of metal for shock, that equals Increased EBI, increased edge bevel integrity. Increased EBR, edge bevel retention. Increased SI, structural integrity. Decreased PS, perceived sharpness. Increased RLC, real life cutting. Increased real life propensity for pass through. Increase GSB, gunshot style butchering. Increase BMA, bidirectional mechanical advantage, single bevels only. Increase OBED, onside bone energy dump, single bevels only. Decrease ASSB, Ashby style single bevels only. Decrease HHS 3-1, Howard Hill style 3-1. Decrease propensity to tip curl. And increased small broadhead surface area arrow flight. So when it says increase small broadhead surface area arrow flight, it's increasing the small surface area. So that's kind of a misnomer there. The surface area gets smaller. Versus when you increase 3-1 mechanical advantage and you decrease the blade thickness to make your grain per grain broadhead weight, you decrease bevel degree and straight razor cutting, and you overheat treat the wrong metals to knife application levels, well, basically it equals the opposite of all the things I just read above. I'm not going to go through them all, but go download that ebook and you could look at the red and the green. There, chapter 3. So if you don't like reading, that chapter I think was 2 pages long. Chapter 3, shortening the broadhead equals increased EBI. So 3-1 mechanical advantage of inclined planes ignorantly misapplied to broadhead applications for generations. Decrease 3-1 mechanical advantage. Increase edge bevel integrity. When the broadhead engineering and design goals are to avoid 3-1 mechanical advantage like the plague, the broadhead gets better and better and becomes thicker bladed grain per grain. All else equal, the EBI, edge bevel integrity, is improved as the broadhead becomes shorter and thicker bladed grain per grain. The shorter head also has less chance of failing on hard impacts, and more bishoparchery.com BMA, bidirectional mechanical advantage, single bevels only, is built into single bevels. As EBI, edge bevel integrity, is increased, more RLC, real life cutting, and arrow projectile applications occur. While we sincerely love and adore Howard Hill, 3-1 mechanical advantage applies to inclined planes. Pushing wheelchairs up ramps, and numerous other things that bow hunters never do in broadhead applications. Yet via a sea of ignorance and decades of archery industry social norms, droves of bow hunters lust for 3-1 and grasp onto it like oxygen. 3-1 makes broadheads worse grain per grain than just about anything else, as 3-1 thins blades, increases tip curl, and serves no function in broadhead applications related to propensity for pass-throughs. 3-1 is another example of broadhead manufacturers and consumers, quote, barking up the wrong tree, end quote, out of ignorance for decades while making EBI, edge bevel integrity, and the long list of truly important arrow projectile attributes worse and worse as the heads get longer and longer. Increase edge bevel retention. For this writing, EBI and EBR can be conceptualized as the same terms, though they are not. Without getting too far into the weeds, we internally define EBI, edge bevel integrity, as a broadhead's ability to maintain its bevel shape when viewed with the naked eye and through various loops. Whereas EBR, edge bevel retention, is defined as a broadhead's ability to retain its sharpness. If EBI, edge bevel integrity, is a challenge for most premium broadheads to achieve, then EBR, edge bevel retention, is far out of their reach. Regardless, 3-to-1 makes grain per grain blades thinner, bevels thinner too, and increases the lever for blades to bend while decreasing both EBI, edge bevel integrity, and EBR, edge bevel retention. Structural integrity. Long and lean heads would seem to penetrate better, but they do not. They also destroy structural integrity. Shortening the broadhead increases the structural integrity of the broadhead bevels with thicker grain per grain blades and bevels and improved EBI and EBR. Shortening the head well below 3-to-1 also increases the structural integrity of the entire broadhead, not just the bevel, while decreasing surface area and improving aeroflight. Perceived sharpness. A non-3-to-1 broadhead may have twice the blade thickness as a 3-to-1 broadhead, engineered into it by design grain per grain. For instance, a short 80 thousandths of an inch thick bladed broadhead will have less PS, perceived sharpness, would double the metal supporting the bevel compared to a long and lean 3-to-1 mechanical advantage, 40 thousandths of an inch thick bladed broadhead of the same grain weight. PS, perceived sharpness is totally irrelevant in a broadhead application because the EBI, edge bevel integrity, of the 80 thousandths of an inch thick bladed double bevel or single bevel head will outperform the 40 thousandths of an inch thick head in RLC, real life cutting, every single time with all else equal. Same construction, same metal, same heat treat, same bevel degree, same arrow projectile, etc. Not in targets, ballistic gel, or cardboard, but on big game and larger size game. Not on shaving your arm hair. The sharpest broadhead in the world is the longest head with the thinnest blades and the lowest number bevel degree, and is horrible for arrow projectile cutting applications in every single way. RLC, real life cutting. If you decrease 3-to-1, and several good things happen, including improved pass-throughs, EBI, edge bevel integrity, and real life cutting. When you shorten less than 3-to-1 and avoid 3-to-1 like the plague, you will increase your real life propensity for pass-through. Better EBI, edge bevel integrity, better SI, structural integrity, and better propensity for pass-through contingent upon your arrow system is not splintering or failing on heavy bone. GSB, gunshot style butchering. Engineering heads less than Howard Hill's misapplied 3-to-1 mechanical advantage of inclined planes to broadhead penetration applications does not make the blade significantly thicker grain per grain. After butchering several animals over the years with several prototypes of broadheads, it seems as though extremely thick blades with planned mechanical cutting results in gunshot-style butchering of the front quarters. So decreasing from 3-to-1 doesn't improve that, but it improves it grain per grain because you could have double the blade thickness and thus EBI. Do shorter sub 3-to-1 broadheads equate to GSB gunshot style butchering of the front quarters? In earnest, probably not. But thicker mechanical cutting blades do. Shortening the head technically inadvertently does thicken the blades grain per grain, as I just said. Increased BMA, bidirectional mechanical advantage, single bevels only. BMA is a trademark term. Bidirectional mechanical advantage is trademarked by Bishop Archery back in 2016. It's really important for single bevels. We were mocked, and now it seems everybody and their brother has copied our steep bevels and short single bevels, or tried to. and emulated but never duplicated several of our single bevel heads. So what's so important with bidirectional mechanical advantage in a single bevel? Everything. Single bevels are primarily, the way I think about them, is how they cut bone and how they bone breach. That's what single bevels do. BMA, the ability of a single bevel broadhead design to over-rotate and perform work across two planes at the same time to energy dump a bone split. BMA is an internal BishopArchery.com term coined by us several years ago to much controversy. Nowadays, it seems as though droves of the same archery industry naysayers have tried to emulate our single bevels with shorter heads and steeper bevels. BishopArchery.com single bevels equals often imitated but never duplicated. Without giving up too much intel for the imitators, increasing BMA, bidirectional mechanical advantage, in basic terms entails 1. Shorter single bevel broadheads, and 2. Thicker blades, and 3. Steeper bevels equals more rotating, more energy dump, less broadhead surface area, less tip curl, more structural integrity, more edge bevel integrity, and more edge bevel retention, amongst numerous other common sense real life benefits over Ashby style single bevels. This is no knock on Ed Ashby groupies or to Ed Ashby or Howard Hill. We ourselves are Dr. Ashby and Howard Hill groupies. But in a free society, we're also free thinkers and freedom lovers. Shoot whatever broadhead you want and navigate with the Ashby Reports as your Bible and the Ashby Foundation as your compass if you choose. It makes no difference to us. The fact is that BishopArchery.com, BMA, bidirectional mechanical advantage, driven single bevels were the first in the world to be the antithesis of Ashby style single bevels and Howard Hill style 3-to-1 broadheads by design. When you decrease from 3-to-1 and get away from 3-to-1, you increase onside bone energy dump in single bevels only. Grain per grain, as the single bevel head gets shorter, the blade gets thicker, and the bevel of any degree is manipulated further to perform work across two planes at the same time on impact of heavy bone. The opposing blade of longer traditional 3-to-1 single bevels cannot even get out of their own way half the time. Combine this with unsupported 25-degree single bevels and thinner blades, thinner bevels, and one could see why broadhead companies have started to emulate our shorter, thicker bladed, steep beveled BishopArchery.com single bevel broadhead designs that they had first mocked. By transitioning to making their heads shorter with steeper bevel angles to emulate but never duplicate our single bevel heads, they still ignorantly leave much out of the BMA equation. When you decrease from 3-to-1 and get away from 3-to-1, you decrease Ashby style single bevel and get away from that. And I'm reading the green here, so if you go and download the ebook, it might do better than the audiobook for you, but I'm basically reading off the green and then reading the after that. Our heads have been the complete opposite of Ashby reports and traditional Ashby style single bevels for several years. Once mocked, our designs are now the most emulated by the mockers who put out single bevels and are now emulating but never duplicating our heads. The shorter the head, the less it is like an Ashby report single bevel. This is a good thing, as there is no downside to BMA-driven single bevels from propensity for bone breaching pass-through and better arrow flight via less surface area, all the way through increased EBI, edge bevel integrity. When you lower 3-to-1, you lower 3-to-1. So Howard Hill style 3-to-1. As stated above, everybody at BishopArchery.com loves and adores Howard Hill as one of the greatest modern-day bow hunters of all time. However, 3-to-1 mechanical advantage was applied to inclined planes, such as wheelchairs being pushed up a ramp, and then misapplied by Howard Hill to broadheads. Our heads have intentionally been made the opposite of Ashby and Hill style heads for years. PTTC, propensity to tip curl. By designing the broadhead shorter, the propensity for tip curls decreases. Shortening the broadhead does numerous positive things touched on above to resist tip curl, while making the functionality of the single bevel and double bevel broadhead better by increasing SI, structural integrity. Small broadhead surface area aeroflight. Some of our bishoparchery.com broadheads have less surface area than many expandable broadheads and offer field point POI, point of impact. Grain per grain, as the broadhead gets shorter than 3:1, it sheds its surface area for forgiving aeroflight and gains structural integrity, leading to more EBI, edge bevel integrity, and propensity for pass-through. The edge bevel integrity continuum, so simple a caveman can understand it. Chapter 4. Increasing blade thickness equals increased EBI. Increased EBI, edge bevel integrity. Grain per grain, the thicker the blade, the more metal supporting the bevel, and the higher the EBI, edge bevel integrity. A 90 thousandths of an inch thick 60-degree double bevel, with all else equal, has more EBI, edge bevel integrity, than a longer, leaner head with a 45 thousandths of an inch thick 60-degree double bevel of the same grain weight. Bevel shock resistance is essential for real-life cutting. Anything that can be done to increase broadhead and bevel shock resistance, and thus EBI, edge bevel integrity, must be done when engineering broadheads. Edge bevel retention. For the purpose of this writing, again, EBI and EBR can be conceptualized in layperson terms as synonyms, though they are subtly different. EBI, edge bevel integrity, can the bevel even maintain its shape when viewed through the naked eye and through various loops when subjected to a single test trial into a medium? EBR equals edge bevel retention. How long can a bevel retain its sharpness and or its ability to cut, be it mechanical cutting, straight edge cutting, or a combination of both? In the example of the 90 thousandths of an inch thick blade and the 45 thousandths of an inch thick blade as listed above, with all else equal, both will have very different results when it comes to EBI, edge bevel integrity. The thicker blade will perhaps have lower perceived sharpness than the thinner blade with twice the metal supporting the bevel, but will retain its sharpness longer in broadhead applications. What are the implications for this? Broadhead bevels tipped on 50 to 500 plus feet per second aero projectiles slamming into hide, connective tissue, bone, and flesh undergo tremendous shock, making blade thickness as well as other broadhead design attributes to shunt, EBI, and EBR to the bevel and broadhead paramount. When we released the archery industry's first S7 tool steel broadheads years before anybody else, we actually imagined that we were making the heads out of our stone points, Dalton drills, and stone point Benton blades. Why? Even though we put out the most shock-resistant broadhead application-specific steel in the history of the archery industry at the time, we pretended the material was stone and even plastic throughout the engineering and testing process to ensure the most EBI, edge bevel integrity. Our 160 thousandths plus of an inch thick 600 grain scientific method broadhead takes the longest to sharpen and has lower PS, perceived sharpness, but stays sharper longer than any other single bevel on the planet to date. This is because the EBI, edge bevel integrity continuum, as represented by the inverse relationship between engineering PS, perceived sharpness, and engineering EBI, edge bevel integrity. Nonetheless, EBR is not possible with straight edge broadhead blades and arrow projectile cutting applications. Increased structural integrity. Yes, all else equal, grain per grain, the thicker the broadhead blade, the shorter the broadhead must become, and the more material being shunted in to support the bevel. The tip, as well as the entire broadhead protruding from the arrow shaft, can only increase in SI, structural integrity, on a grain per grain basis. This is one of many reasons 3-to-1 and PS, perceived sharpness, are ignorant multi-generational archery industry metric blunders that have been instrumental in engineering horrible broadheads for arrow projectile cutting applications since long before Howard Hill. Perceived sharpness. Yes, the PS perceived sharpness will decrease as the broadhead blade becomes thicker. With thicker blades comes thicker bevels and more metal shunted around the bevel at any degree bevel. However, this extra metal around the bevel does not mean that a super thick 45-degree single bevel or a thick bladed 60-degree double bevel cannot be taken past shaving sharp. Though this metric of shaving sharp is an ignorant one to chase. How well the bevel can withstand shock is essential for EBI, edge bevel integrity, and RLC, real-life cutting. Real-life cutting. The thicker the blade of the broadhead, the more it cuts in arrow projectile applications. Not with fine motor skill rubber band cutting tests or into dainty body cavities of bunny rabbits with a rear deploying thin-bladed 3-inch expandable cutting broadhead, but in the application of slamming into big game hide, connective tissue, bone, and flesh. Blade thickness matters. From small white-tailed deer through elephants, blade thickness is essential for the rigorous demands of real-life arrow projectile cutting of big and dangerous game, as it increases EBI, edge bevel integrity. Real-life propensity for pass-through. Increase EBI, EBR, SI, BMA, and RLC all increase real-life propensity for pass-through. If your arrow system can hold together, that is. If your arrow shaft splinters or your outsert on your wimpy micro arrow bends on the little femur of a white-tailed deer, then the broadhead, no matter how robust, cannot help you. Our BishopArchery.com steel-footed arrows have been slammed into concrete blocks under controlled conditions by professional John Lusk on his Lusk Archery Adventures YouTube channel in broadhead tests hundreds of times over the years. Your arrow system is just as important, if not more important, than your broadhead, as a tough micro-diameter hunting arrow does not physically exist on our planet. If your broadhead is unscathed but is driven way down inside your arrow shaft, it does little good for RLC, real-life cutting. And then I got a warning here in highlighted, do not shoot into concrete blocks as the arrow can deflect back at you and kill you. So do not shoot our arrows, broadheads, or anybody's into concrete blocks unless you're, John Lusk is a professional arrow tester there. With a single bevel on heavy onside bone, the broadhead's blade thickness is even more important for BishopArchery.com BMA, bidirectional mechanical advantage, and energy dumping the bone split to pass through. Gunshot style butchering. After butchering numerous gunshot game and arrow shot game, blade thickness and mechanical cutting does contribute to more blood clotting because the high-power rifle destroys the front quarters and bleeds more and thus clots more to butcher around. Not blood coagulates in an ignorant archery social norm chatboard way with serrated heads compared to dainty scalpel heads and less blood on the ground, with less bleeding and more blood coagulation than a straight edge? No. A massive amount of damage and bleeding in front quarters shot with our industry-leading thick-bladed and serrated BishopArchery.com jumbo broadhead prototypes over the years. Thick-bladed mechanical cutting stone points that have dominated the archery timeline of the human race are superior to anything modern man can muck up and over-conceptualize into the crossbow, compound bow, and traditional archery industry. They blood clot more in their front quarters when we butcher them when shot with high-powered rifles in our jumbo broadheads because they bleed more, a lot more, and when we can shoot any heads, and we can make any heads we want. We make the heads we want and have no regard for the archery industry, YouTube, popular bow hunting culture, chat boards, social media, or anything else within the archery industry. This is because as hunters, as humans, travel through time, this era is a blip of a speck on the archery timeline. We take pride in making the best heads we can for each target game species. EBI, edge bevel integrity driven thick bladed mechanical cutting, is essential for GSB, gunshot style butchering, the front quarters. Sharpness is easy for us to do and obsess over, but it is not important at all in big game broadhead tip arrow projectiles. EBI. EBI is important, and EBR is made possible by planned mechanical cutting. Regardless of the material, by the way. I don't care what material you're using or where it came from. BMA, bidirectional mechanical advantage. Single bevels only. Purposefully increasing blade thickness is essential to increase the broadhead's ability to over-rotate and energy dump heavy onside bone splits on impact for the highest levels of BMA. By thickening the head, it becomes shorter grain per grain and further manipulates the bevel. It does several things for a single bevel. Without giving up too much information to our legions of imitators but never duplicators of our BishopArchery.com broadheads, shortening a single bevel head will make it rotate more, among several other things. But shortening a single bevel head will make it rotate more. Manipulating the bevel by significantly thickening the broadhead blade will make it rotate more as well. It also manipulates the bevel, by the way. Increasing the bevel degree to as close to 45 degrees as possible and as far away from 25 degrees as possible will make it rotate more and bone split more. Epoxying or gluing the broadhead threads voids the warranties, but is essential for BMA on all left and right single bevels. Single bevels do many things worse than double bevels, other than bone split with BMA. However, this is a pretty important thing. In the case of epoxy single bevel threads, thicker blades serve more than just structural integrity and prevention of single bevel, edge bevel chatter from thin, I got parentheses there, less than 70 thousandths of an inch thick blades. Also, grain per grain, the thicker the blades, the shorter the head becomes, and the more the BishopArchery.com BMA. Where you can engineer the tanto tip out of the head and empower the single bevels to over-rotate immediately with the highest grain per grain levels of BMA put into the onside bone splitting effort, you should. This is for several reasons, but most obvious is that the single bevel performs bidirectional mechanical advantage work immediately on impact and rotates even more than a tanto tip single bevel of the same blade thickness and bevel degree. You got to get the broadhead pretty short to get rid of the tip, though. But the shorter, let me get back to the text here. The shorter and thicker the blade, the more the BMA capacity of the single bevel broadhead. Archery companies first mocked us and then attempted to copy our designs, metallurgy, heat treat, and plating programs, but never duplicated us at bishoparchery.com. They never can duplicate what we do because they are tiny-minded people. Media personalities that take the cheap way out for profit and cannot wrap their minds around numerous aspects of the original Ashby reports and popular bow hunting culture social norms is being wrong. Fast forward years after our bishoparchery.com scientific method single bevel is released, with our steep bevels, short overall designs, the opposite of the broadhead reports, the opposite of the Ashby reports, and now many companies emulate but fail to duplicate our designs. The best bone breaching single bevels in the world are built the complete opposite of the original Ashby reports. In the end, it is our BMA and not 3-to-1, nor Ashby broadhead foundations and the regurgitation of the Ashby reports that produces small surface area, ultra long range arrow flight, and bone breaching. Single bevels need to be shorter than double bevels, by the way. I'll give you that. OBED, onside bone energy dump, single bevels only. This is described above in increased bishoparchery.com BMA. A single bevel's primary job is to cut and split heavy onside bone. Period. If you're using one for anything else, switch to a double bevel. I'll say it again. A single bevel's primary job is to cut and split heavy onside bone. The more the single bevel is made like a broadhead report single bevel or Howard Hill long and lean head, the worse it performs across multiple metrics as viewed throughout the EBI, the Edge Bevel Integrity Continuum, and BMA, bidirectional mechanical advantage metrics. All developed by bishoparchery.com, by the way. Ashby style single bevels only. Yes, the thicker the blades, the shorter the broadhead becomes grain per grain. The further the ultra thick and short bishoparchery.com BMA driven broadheads deviate from Ashby style single bevels and Howard Hill 3-to-1 broadheads, the better they get. This is intentional with our often imitated but never duplicated single bevel broadheads at bishoparchery.com. For years before legions of broadhead companies tried to emulate us by steepening their bevels, making their heads substantially shorter, introducing S7 tool steel, and bootlegging our plating processes to no avail. Howard Hill style 3-to-1. Again, the thicker the blades, the shorter the broadhead becomes grain per grain. The further the ultra thick and short bishoparchery.com BMA broadheads deviate from Ashby style single bevels and Howard Hill 3-to-1 broadheads, the better they get. PTTC, propensity to tip curl. The thicker the blades, the shorter the lever arm, the more stout the broadhead is, and the harder it is, grain per grain, to tip curl. SBSAAF, small broadhead surface area arrow flight. The thicker the blades, the shorter the broadhead becomes grain per grain. The implications of a significantly shorter broadhead are smaller broadhead surface area and better arrow flight out of crossbow, compound bow, and traditional archery bows. Penetration is better. Penetration is better out of the short broadheads, as 3-to-1 is an ignorant social norm of the archery masses and misapplied to broadhead applications. There is no downside to small surface area broadheads, as they penetrate better than 3-to-1 style heads with all else equal and have better EBI, edge bevel integrity, grain per grain. Many of our bishoparchery.com heads have smaller surface area than expandable broadheads, with none of the numerous downsides of expandable broadheads. Chapter 5. The Edge Bevel Integrity Continuum. Increasing bevel degree. equals increased EBI. When you increase the edge bevel integrity, EBI, edge bevel integrity. So I'm reading off the green here. If you download the ebook, it's a lot easier to follow because everything's coded in green and red. All right, but I'll do my best for this audio book for you guys. EBI, edge bevel integrity, grain per grain. The higher the bevel degree number, the more metal supporting the bevel of both double bevel and single bevel broadheads. For single bevels, the steeper single bevel also happens to over-rotate an energy dump into the bone breaching effort with more BMA, bidirectional mechanical advantage, and less propensity for edge bevel chatter than Ashby-style single bevels. In other words, there is no downside to higher degree bevels in broadhead applications of both double and single bevels. A 60-degree double bevel or a 45-degree single bevel will always have more grain per grain EBI, edge bevel integrity, and EBR, edge bevel retention, than the same exact broadhead with a 22-degree double bevel or a 25-degree single bevel. Bevel shock resistance is essential for RLC, real-life cutting of big and dangerous game arrow projectiles. In single bevels, EBI, edge bevel integrity, is even more important as nothing reinforces the other side of the bevel and there is no downside to a steep single bevel. In fact, there's a lot of upside across several metrics for real-life cutting, but I lost my spot here. Here we go. An industry common 15 to 22 degree double bevel razor blade is lusted by ignorant arm hair shaving bow hunters everywhere. And I was one of them too, guys, for decades. So, but for over a decade now, going on 15 years, we've moved past that. Okay? I'll read it again. An industry common 15 to 22 degree double bevel razor blade. This is what you guys buy. This is the #1 broadheads in Bass Pro and Cabela's and out and about. An industry common 15 to 22 degree double bevel razor blade is lusted by ignorant arm hair shaving bow hunters everywhere and puts a spotlight on the ignorance of crossbow, compound bow, and traditional archery bow hunters and broadhead manufacturers of modern society. They're just chasing sharpness, just like a real tree real tree mossy oak camouflage. Instead of a ASAT camouflage or a Winona camouflage, and really no camouflage is going to help you. Just don't move, right? So the 15 to 22 degree bevels that you see all over the place, from Walmart to Bass Pro, they have no chance of having EBI. EBI, edge bevel integrity, and various other metrics are tested by bishoparchery.com before we release a new broadhead to the public by placing the head in a bench vise and then striking the bevel while wearing PPE, personal protective equipment, with a 4-pound mini sledgehammer. Why? EBI, edge bevel integrity, is that important, and contrary to popular belief, broadheads work nothing like knives. Nothing like knives. EBR, edge bevel retention. All things equal, the higher the degree of the bevel, the more prolonged the bevel will retain its sharpness through the body cavity on 50 to 500 plus feet per second arrow projectiles when impacting hide, connective tissue, flesh, and bone. With industry-leading heat treat processes, metallurgy, programming, engineering for shock, and monolithic manufacturing processes, we have the highest EBR, edge bevel retention, of any broadhead on the planet at bishoparchery.com. However, this is a big however. However, it is not that important of a metric compared to closely related but different EBI, edge bevel integrity. And I'll go on to tell you why. Our bishoparchery.com specifically coined EBI, edge bevel integrity, and the archery industry long-standing EBR, edge bevel retention terms, are not the same as detailed previously throughout the text. EBI, edge bevel integrity, equals retained bevel shape, and EBR equals edge bevel retention equals retention of PS, perceived sharpness. Not that it matters, but straight edge arrow points of any material and of any construction process cannot produce EBR. They cannot produce edge bevel retention. It's not possible. Okay, I don't care if you make it out of S7 tool steel. I don't care if you make it out of S7 tool steel from China, S7 tool steel from USA, supposedly, like these guys are saying they're doing. I don't care if you make it out of Captain America's shield. EBR is not possible in a broadhead application for big game. Not even deer. SI, structural integrity. The overall broadhead structural integrity is not increased with higher numerical degree edge bevels, but the grain per grain structural integrity of the broadhead bevel, as well as the head's EBI, edge bevel integrity, is increased for the task of 50 to 500 plus feet per second arrow projectile cutting a big and dangerous game. PS, perceived sharpness. The higher the bevel degree number, a lot of guys don't even know anything about the bevel degree. They never ask. A lot of broadhead companies make broadheads and don't even consider the bevel degree, other than to make it less to get you to buy their broadheads because they're so sharp. But they go dull just by shooting into a target. Ooh. The higher the bevel degree number, the lower the grain per grain PS, perceived sharpness. Contrary to what has been ignorantly proclaimed by modern crossbow, compound bow, and traditional archery bow hunting societies, PS, perceived sharpness, means absolutely nothing in arrow projectile cutting applications of big game. It's EBI. A higher degree bevel can still be taken to razor blade sharpness and will retain its sharpness longer than a lower degree bevel passing through the body cavity. The PS, perceived sharpness, of a 15 thousandths of an inch thick 15 degree double bevel will register much higher than that of a 90 thousandths of an inch thick 60 degree double bevel of the same sharpness. Even though they're the same sharpness, the 15 thousandths of an inch thick 15 degree double bevel will have much higher perceived sharpness than the 90 thousandths of an inch thick 60 degree double bevel. In which one would you rather shoot? I'd rather shoot the 90 thousandths of an inch thick 60 degree double bevel. PS is a tiny-minded and worthless metric for RLC, real-life cutting of big game and dangerous game animals in 50 to 500 plus feet per second arrow projectile cutting applications. RLC, real-life cutting, EBI, edge bevel integrity capacity of a broadhead is paramount for 50 to 500 plus feet per second arrow projectile RLC real-life cutting of big game, including the tiniest whitetail deer. Therefore, as the degree of the bevel increases, so does the EBR, edge bevel retention. Because EBI and EBR are tied together. How long the bevel stays sharp. More importantly, so does the EBI, edge bevel integrity, increase how long the bevel retains its unmagnified and magnified shape. Real-life propensity for pass-through. Less chance of energy loss to edge bevel chatter, the steeper the bevel becomes compared to wimpy 25 degree single bevels and wimpy 15 to 22 degree double bevels. The higher bevel degree, combined with the other attributes of thicker blades, heat treat manufacturing processes, and other factors all work symbiotically to increase our bishoparchery.com broadheads pass-throughs if your arrow system can hold together without splintering on all types of bone and connective tissue. GSB, gunshot style butchering. While a thick bladed 60 degree double bevel 3-blade will produce triangle wounds instead of 3 slits, and GSB, gunshot style butchering, ... It is speculated that is primarily the #1 bishoparchery.com jumbo broadheads. Planned mechanical cutting. Planned mechanical cutting. Combined with its two super thick blades. Super thick blades. To proclaim that gunshot-style butchering of the front quarters comes from Bevel degree, when it is earnestly unknown where it comes from, other than their planned mechanical cutting and super thick blades, will be speculating at best. Blood does clot more with a high-powered rifle and a mechanical cutting blade, and there is more blood clotting as long as the animal being harvested is alive when shot with a high-powered rifle or a BishopArchery.com jumbo broadhead. Unlike Chapboard or Broadhead report bad fake news about blood clotting of serrated heads, it is due to big game bleeding more with high-powered rifles and admittedly biasly with our thick-bladed mechanical cutting jumbo heads because they bleed until their heart stops pumping blood, and they bleed more with a high-powered rifle and BishopArchery.com jumbo broadheads until they die. The front quarters are filled with gunshot-style butchering blood clots because they are filled with massive amounts of blood if shot anywhere in the vitals for a few seconds as they die. We are trying to come up with a humane way to keep the test subjects alive longer, but with a high-powered rifle or a jumbo broadhead, it has been especially challenging over the years to keep the animal alive for more than a few seconds, while blood trails and blood on the ground is determined more from hitting an artery rather than hitting veins on pass-through and is unpredictable by nature. The blood on the ground from our 126 thousandths of an inch thick bladed planned mechanical cutting, 1.75 inch wide cutting diameter, 60-degree double bevel BishopArchery.com jumbo 3 broadhead results in levels of EBI, edge bevel integrity, and EBR, edge bevel retention, leading to bleeding out in ways our scientific method, dicing drill, Holy Trinity, and Blood Floods 3 DG broadhead models cannot replicate. So I think that's important too, because the Blood Floods 3 broadhead did have mechanical cutting on it as well, as you might know. And that's kind of a proprietary thing, but that's pretty important too. BMA, bidirectional mechanical advantage, single bevels only. According to BishopArchery.com coin BMA, the closer the single bevel is to 45 degrees, the more it will energy dump and over-rotate a heavy bone split. BMA is the opposite of Ashby 20 and 25 degree single bevels and the opposite of Howard Hill style 3-to-1 broadheads. Shorter, thicker broadheads will with numerically higher degree bevels energy dump as per BishopArchery.com BMA, bidirectional mechanical advantage, as engineered into the heavy bone splitting effort, regardless of broadhead reports. Regardless of popular culture, game commission literature, regardless of what the game commission bow hunting classes tell you, regardless of social norms, regardless of celebrities, regardless of your YouTube channels that you watch, regardless of social norms of crossbow, compound bow, and traditional archery subcultures, there is no downside to steep single bevels and only upside. The further away from an Ashby Hill style broadhead for traditional archery, hybrid longbows, and recurves through crossbows, the better for single bevels. Onside bone energy dump, single bevels only. And by the way, we were the first ones to say that. And then now people are emulating us and trying to copy us, trying to copy what we're doing. They have no idea what they're doing. OBED, onside bone energy dump, single bevels only. Heavy onside bone splitting as well as EBI, edge bevel integrity, improves as the numerical bevel degree increases. The steeper than a traditional single bevel style broadhead and the closer to 45 degrees, the better for single bevels. So again, this is all in green. This is all talking about increasing the bevel degree number. Ashby style single bevels only. As the bevel degree increases past 25 degrees, the more the broadhead deviates from the original Ashby reports, and the better the single bevel becomes, literally in every way. Howard Hill style 3-to-1. Higher numerical degree double bevels and single bevels have less and less PS, perceived sharpness, than Howard Hill style broadheads, and more EBI, edge bevel integrity, and more real-life arrow projectile cutting when slamming into big game body cavities. PTTC, propensity to tip curl. In the cases where the broadhead is short enough to benefit from BMA, where the tanto tip can be totally removed, where the broadhead rotates a bone split on impact, with the steeper bevel acting as a single bevel tip. In these cases, the tip is reinforced with a steeper edge bevel that decreases the broadhead's propensity to tip curl, while increasing bone splitting in single bevels through bishoparchery.com BMA. On double bevel cut-on contact 3 blades, a 60-degree double bevel provides more tip reinforcement and shunts more metal to the tip than a 22-degree double bevel, for instance. SBSAF, small broadhead surface area arrow flight. Edge bevel degree has no statistically significant positive or negative effect on broadhead surface area for forgiving arrow flight. Okay, that's page 24. So page 25, chapter 6, the edge bevel integrity continuum. Adding planned mechanical cutting increases EBI. EBI, edge bevel integrity. The ability of the broadhead to maintain its bevel shape under magnification and to the naked eye when the bevel is subjected to shock is enhanced through introduction of planned mechanical cutting of the broadhead bevel. So EBI and EBR. In big game and dangerous game hunting arrow applications traveling from 50 to 500 plus feet per second, before the broadhead is slammed into hide, connective tissue, bone, and flesh of game, the EBI, edge bevel integrity of the broadhead, is essential for real-life cutting. Most brands of broadheads, including our bootleggers, cannot maintain EBI, edge bevel integrity, like bishoparchery.com heads perform for real-life cutting. And I'm biased, okay? But a kindergartner could look at shoot something into 2 different mediums. A kindergartner could tell you which one's better, right? It's not perceived sharpness, it's EBI. This is because most broadhead bevel degrees, blade thicknesses, materials, and heat treat yield edge bevel chatter and other forms of dynamic, haphazard, and unplanned mechanical cutting upon edge bevel failure, while EBI, edge bevel integrity, is fleeting for most every broadhead model on the planet. EBI is possible with the best non-brittle heat treat, tool steels, numerically high edge bevels, thick broadhead blades, and monolithic manufacturing processes to ensure structural integrity of straight edge bevels. However, nothing on the planet has the capacity to produce ideal EBR, edge bevel retention, in broadhead applications where a bow hunter can bank on it in big and dangerous game situations, other than planned mechanical cutting. And primitive people know that 60,000, not 6,000, 60,000 years ago, we are not even a speck on the timeline. They could hunt circles around us. We had no clue as a society. Myself included, we're nothing compared to them. EBR, edge bevel retention. To increase EBR, edge bevel retention of straight edge bevels, then increase edge bevel degree, blade thickness, and shock-resistant tool steel metallurgy programming specific to arrow projectile cutting applications. Again, however, EBR, edge bevel retention. I got this highlighted too. So you really need to go download the ebook, because I can't stress this enough. EBR, edge bevel retention of straight edge broadhead bevels in big game hunting application is not possible with any material, heat treat, blade thickness, or bevel degree combination on arrow impact of body cavities as listed above. And I've put out the best, the most EBR ever, and it's not possible. The best models over the years, I've been obsessed with it. It's not possible, and it's not worth chasing. Because what does real cutting is performs real cutting is EBI. By stark contrast and God's grace through planned mechanical cutting, EBR, edge bevel retention, has been possible since the beginning of time in stone point projectile applications. The sharpness retention benefit of arrow projectile-based planned mechanical cutting is most realized by moving the broadhead forward through multiple body cavities and mediums. This is because the bevel cuts by forward broadhead motion of 50 to 500 plus feet per second arrow projectiles through the body cavity. In other words, stone points of wimpy stone can have EBR. And they do it through planned mechanical cutting. It cannot be tested in the conventional ways, such as cutting a wire on a sharpness testing device. Ironically, planned mechanical cutting is the long-standing and most conventional way stone points have performed cutting for over 60,000 years. More ironic is that current archery social norms ignorantly mock mechanical cutting. And yet modern archery is a mere speck of a blip on the archery timeline. EBR, edge bevel retention of mechanical cutting stone points, is over 60,000 years old, and perpetual EBR, edge bevel retention in projectile cutting applications, arrow projectile cutting applications, is physically possible with soft stone bevels dating back from over 60,000 years ago. Yet today's best brands of straight bevel steel heads ironically cannot come close to mustering EBR, edge bevel retention. They can by shaving your arm hair, but they cannot in an arrow cutting application of big game even of deer. SI, structural integrity. The overall broadhead structural integrity is not increased through planned mechanical cutting. However, the structural integrity of the broadhead bevel for EBI, edge bevel integrity, and EBR, edge bevel retention, is increased perpetually into the future, contingent upon the broadhead and or bevel not failing on hide, connective tissue, bone, flesh, steel, concrete, or any other mediums that the arrow is shot into. I got another big warning here. Do not shoot broadheads into concrete, steel, or anything else other than targets and animals, as the arrow can deflect back at you and kill you. So I'm telling you, don't do it. Don't go do that and then sue us. Don't go shoot into concrete blocks and have the arrow come back and impale you and kill you or take your eyeball out. Don't shoot into those things. P.S. Perceived sharpness. Again, planned mechanical cutting sharpness cannot be tested by shaving arm hair or pushing down on a sharpness testing wire. The mechanical cutting stone points or broadhead sharpness utility is best realized by moving the serrated stone point or serrated broadhead forward. EBR, edge bevel retention, in a broadhead application is finally possible through planned mechanical cutting. Ironically, the PS perceived sharpness is lowered. Ironically, the PS perceived sharpness is lowered with planned mechanical cutting, and even more ironic is that EBR, edge bevel retention, driven planned mechanical cutting stone points have dominated the archery timeline for tens of thousands of years. They didn't even pay any money for these. You got to buy anything from me. You have everything you need. They have been the forgotten favorite of most of humankind's history, and notorious for chapboard expert regurgitation about blood coagulation, blood clots, versus surgeon scalpels as one of many exclamation marks placed upon modern bow hunting popular cultures of sheer ignorance. Rather than artifacts to be collected, the stone points that we have come across from Bishop, California, and Rachel, Nevada, have turned out to be a blessing for us to study and reverse engineer them more than to collect. The fact is that they have known for tens of thousands of years that planned mechanical cutting is the only way EBR, edge bevel retention, is possible in an aero projectile cutting application, regardless of the best tool steels or materials on the planet. EBR, edge bevel retention of a broadhead tipped big game aero projectile, can only be achieved through planned mechanical cutting. Ironically, PS perceived sharpness continues to decrease as engineering of EBI, edge bevel integrity, and EBR, edge bevel retention, into the broadhead increases in an inverse relationship. This is the edge bevel integrity continuum and the inverse relationship between EBI, EBR, and PS, perceived sharpness. And it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. And for those that don't know, I think most people know, but a lot of things I take for granted, stone points, they're all mechanical cutting. I think a lot of people don't know that. But stone points are all mechanical cutting. Going back to 60,000 years ago. RLC, real-life cutting. The most effective way to perform RLC, real-life cutting in aero projectile applications with a straight edge double bevel or single bevel is via EBI, edge bevel integrity. EBR, edge bevel retention, is not possible with a straight edge for RLC, real-life cutting of 50 to 500 plus feet per second aero projectiles, slamming into big game as they cut with EBI, edge bevel integrity. They cannot muster EBR, as stated before. So for all practical purposes, EBR, edge bevel retention, in aero projectile cutting applications is only possible with planned mechanical cutting, regardless of the tool steel material or other manufacturing processes of broadheads as previously detailed above. It doesn't mean EBI of straight edge, like a 600 grain single bevel, is bad, right? EBI is still important. EBI is where real life cutting is at. EBR, you could think of EBR as kind of like the frosting on the cake, okay? Most broadheads cannot have EBI even, right? So don't get too hung up on EBI versus EBR. If you have EBI and EBR, great. If you have EBI, great, because most broadheads out there do not have EBI. I'm sorry, they do not. They even try to copy me. They still don't have it. I have them all. I test them. So planned mechanical cutting yields EBI, edge bevel integrity, and EBR, edge bevel retention, for the perpetually sharpest real-life cutting transcending time in big and dangerous game aero projectile applications. Some years ago in Rachel, Nevada, and Benton, California, we developed the most shock-resistant broadhead materials, heat treat processes, and bevel designs with the highest EBI, edge bevel integrity, in the world to date at Bishop Archery. Still, EBR, edge bevel retention, was not possible in big game aero applications with a straight edge bevel of any degree or composed of any material on the planet. However, soft stone points scattered all over the world that are older than the first coming of Jesus Christ still maintain their EBR, edge bevel retention, for big and dangerous game aero applications through their mechanical cutting bevels thousands of years later. Thousands of years later. When serrated heads move forward in time through the body cavity, they cut with EBI and EBR contingent upon the bevel and broadhead stone point design can maintain structural integrity, SI, structural integrity. Far beyond ignorant chatboard quarterbacks about blood coagulation of serrated blades and social media consumerism of YouTube, the outdoor channel, hunting personalities, the primitive bow hunting societies of yesteryear, primitive, not traditional, primitive bow hunting societies of yesteryear had the self-reliance and skill sets that modern societies of crossbow, compound bow, and traditional archery popular cultures will never fully appreciate or understand for RLC, real life cutting. Myself included. I will never. The people that came before us, or whatever it was before us that was here, they knew they could make stone points with more EBI and EBR than we can make in a premium steel broadhead than any manufacturer can make. Explain that. There's nothing to sell you here. The free stone points, grain per grain, have more EBR, edge bevel retention, thousands of years later than any brand spanking new straight edge bevel tool steel broadhead and arrow projectile cutting applications that you could buy from any manufacturer, including bishoparchery.com. Their stone points don't even rust either. You know, God sent us everything we needed tens of thousands of years ago. It's true. For tens of thousands of years up until recently, humans possessed material things that they could only count on two hands. These few material possessions ensured the survival of the human race from the gift of fire to sticks and mechanical cutting stone points. We were better hunters and gatherers as a human race back then compared to YouTube, TikTok, and outdoor channel hunters of today's world. We have lost our way as a hunting society, buying 200-inch bucks, TikToking, and becoming comparatively soft as a society. Before you discount serrated broadheads, realize that planned mechanical cutting of serrated stone points dominates more than 99.99% of the bow hunting timeline. And it is our era. It is our era that has lost our way. Not the indigenous and pragmatic engineers from our primitive past. You don't need to buy camouflage or broadheads or anything from anybody. God ensured that you don't even need to buy a traditional recurve or a longbow, as everything you need from a stave to a stone is all around you and in great abundance. Real life propensity for pass-through, RLPFP, real life propensity for pass-through. Planned mechanical cutting does not impede penetration, nor does it clot the blood of big and dangerous game animals to lessen blood trails or act as a blood coagulation band-aid, or chapboard broadhead report stitches sutures. Quite the contrary, to flip the tiny-mindedness of modern popular norms of crossbow, compound bow, and traditional archery subcultures, if a surgeon used a serrated scalpel, then there would be much more bleeding and many more dead patients. In earnest, it is small-minded to compare scalpels, knives, and broadheads, as their applications, structural integrity, and bevel requirements are nothing like one another. GSB, gunshot style butchering. Like butchering the front quarters of gunshot deer with blood clots everywhere, they do blood clot more as massive amounts of blood in gunshot and thick-bladed mechanical cutting jumbo prototypes over the years. They blood clot more because they bleed more with centerfire rifles and thick-bladed mechanical cutting heads on pass-through if you can keep them alive long enough. The reason they blood clot more, regardless of how much broadhead and bow hunting quote-unquote experts in popular society hold on to their ignorance or their stubbornness, is because they bleed more. That's why they blood clot more, because they bleed more. EBR, edge bevel retention, is not possible in big game arrow projectile cutting applications, regardless of any material currently on Earth, without planned mechanical cutting. In other words, without planned mechanical cutting, you cannot achieve edge bevel retention. Now, you might be able to go out and shoot an arrow into a medium and then still be able to shave your arm hair. But if you want to go out and go hunting and think you're going to have edge bevel retention, you're not. The only way is with planned mechanical cutting. It's the only way. It's not possible. And we have the most edge. I'm real proud. We've had the most edge bevel retention with our first S7 tool steel broadheads back in 2016. Steep bevel angles, all the things that go into edge bevel retention. And I'm telling you, it's not possible. I don't care if you what the material is. But with planned mechanical cutting with stone points even, it's possible. And stone is much softer than steel. I think most people know that. BMA, bidirectional mechanical advantage, single bevels only. This is another concept that we came up with and developed, bidirectional mechanical advantage. And this really had a big influence in how we developed our single bevels. We didn't go copy people and cite Ashby reports. We didn't do that. We made Ashby style broadheads, but we would never release them. Planned mechanical cutting only increases BMA in cases where the single bevel design would otherwise waste bone breaching and pass-through energy in instances of haphazard dynamic mechanical cutting. Edge bevel chatter, parentheses, edge bevel chatter, where the single bevel fails. With thin-bladed, low-bevel degree single bevels, it is all too familiar for bow hunters that just dropped tens of thousands of dollars on the buffalo hunt of a lifetime to incur single bevel broadhead edge bevel chatter. Otherwise, planned mechanical cutting has zero positive or negative impact on BMA, bidirectional mechanical advantage. Onside bone energy dump, single bevels only. In this instance as well, OBED, onside bone energy dump, is only increased through planned mechanical cutting to prevent the all too common instance of edge bevel chatter of single bevels in conjunction with thicker, shorter blades with steeper bevels. The thicker, shorter blades with steeper bevels increase the OBED and BMA, whereas the planned mechanical cutting does not directly increase or decrease OBED or BMA as detailed above. ASSB, Ashby style single bevels only. Planned mechanical cutting is the opposite of Ashby Howard Hill style heads in the majority of styles of 99% of the broadheads on the market in the archery industry. HHS 3-1, Howard Hill style 3-1. Again, planned mechanical cutting is the opposite of Ashby Howard Hill style broadheads and the majority of broadheads out there on the market. SBSAF, small broadhead surface area aeroflight. Planned mechanical cutting does not increase or statistically significantly decrease surface area of the broadhead. The edge bevel integrity continuum, so simple a caveman can understand it. And to really understand it, you should really look at the green and the red print. And then I've made a picture book for you too. Chapter 7, appropriate broadhead application heat treatment per type of metal for shock increases EBI. Chapter 5, appropriate broadhead application heat treatment per type of metal for shock. Increased EBI, edge bevel integrity. Most heads on the market are either overheat treated, leading to total loss of EBI, edge bevel integrity through edge bevel chatter, or are properly heat treated with a lower Rockwell hardness but the wrong metal for shock resistance. In either case, EBI, edge bevel integrity, is dependent on the most shock resistant metals that are not overheat treated. In addition to proper heat treat, increasing blade thickness, increasing bevel degree, and other engineering factors specific to EBI, edge bevel integrity, all complement proper heat treat, as the thicker the blade, the more we can increase Rockwell hardness without making the head brittle per type of metal used. Another thing people don't usually think about or have no idea. So the thicker the blade, we could go up a couple points on the Rockwell hardness without making the head brittle. The higher Rockwell hardness does not mean the more EBI, edge bevel integrity. And in fact, it often means preparing for edge bevel chatter, especially with overheat treated brands of broadheads that utilize stainless steel. The fact that knife applications can have a much, much higher Rockwell hardness than broadhead applications when constructed of the same exact metal without bending or shattering is telling of the huge dichotomy between knife and broadhead applications. Knives and broadheads are nothing like one another for application. Unfortunately, many archery and broadhead manufacturing companies and their end consumers do not understand the vast differences between knife applications and broadhead applications when it comes to the type of metal and appropriate heat treat for shock applications, such as in big and dangerous game arrow projectiles. Most of your heads out on the market are over heat treated per metal, per the metal. EBR, edge bevel retention. EBR, edge bevel retention, and EBI, edge bevel integrity, as detailed above, can be conceptualized by our bootleg competitors that have imitated us over the years but never duplicated us, and for the layperson hardcore bow hunter as synonymous, even though they are important subtle differences between the two. If EBI, edge bevel integrity, is not possible by most brands of heads due to the bevel design, type of metal used, and or overheat treat for a broadhead application, then EBR, edge bevel retention, is a futile effort at best. If the head edge bevel chatters at all, then all the EBI, edge bevel integrity, and all the EBR, edge bevel retention, is lost to non-shock resistant steel and or overheat treat. At bishoparchery.com, we take the most shock resistant materials currently on the planet that we can get our hands on and underheat treat them for broadhead applications to avoid brittleness. This and planned mechanical cutting ensure EBR, edge bevel retention, on all our mechanical cutting heads. You go on with type of metal and heat treat. SI, structural integrity, increased. Overheat treating to knife application levels of hardness is a great recipe for broadhead shattering like glass. Using a non-shock resistant steel, or the best steels for knife edge retention, but not shock, is another surefire way to have bent or shattered heads regardless of the heat treat. Compound case hardening of the least shock resistant steels or aging of titanium will not change the fact that shock resistance is not there in the capacity of the material for a broadhead application in the first place. The best shock resistant metal that is not overheat treated is the bare minimum and is absent from most heads on the market, as the social norm is that scalpels and collector knife attributes make the best broadheads when they do not. When you use the most shock resistant metals and heat treat them properly for broadhead applications, then SI, structural integrity, increases. PS, lower PS, perceived sharpness. Perceived sharpness always lowers, by the way. And you guys and everybody and their brother and myself for years, since I was a 14-year-old kid, for a couple decades, chase perceived sharpness. Notice it always lowers. Perceived sharpness will decrease when broadheads use the most shock resistant metals and are heat treated for shock of broadhead tipped arrow projectile applications. For instance, our bishoparchery.com S7 tool steel at 58 Rockwell hardness is perfect without becoming brittle. And our 41L40 tool steel at 55 Rockwell is also perfectly heat treated for broadhead applications without becoming brittle. They're both the same exact broadhead. That's the only difference. The perceived sharpness of the 41L40 tool steel is higher than the S7 tool steel, though our S7 tool steel has more ability to perform RLC, real-life cutting, when tipped on 50 to 500 plus feet per second arrow projectiles. PS, perceived sharpness is totally irrelevant, and yet figuratively, 99% of the population and everybody and their brother ignorantly chases sharpness rather than EBI, edge bevel integrity, for RLC, real-life cutting. Just because the 41L40 has a higher PS, perceived sharpness, than the same exact head made out of our S7 tool steel, doesn't mean the 41L40 version has higher EBI, edge bevel integrity, higher EBR, edge bevel retention, or higher RLC, real life cutting, than our S7 version. P.S. Perceived sharpness is the most ignorant metric of modern crossbow, compound bow, and traditional archery industry subcultures. P.S. Perceived sharpness is the most ignorant metric of modern crossbow, compound bow, and traditional archery industry subcultures. Increased RLC real life cutting. Without the world's most shock resistant metals and proper heat treating, for a broadhead application, single bevels will look like chewed up bubble gum. And double bevels lose EBI, edge bevel integrity, under magnification, and even to the naked eye. This makes the broadhead sharpness totally irrelevant. Heads having the lowest degree bevels and thinnest blades compound the loss of bishoparchery.com BMA, bidirectional mechanical advantage, in the instance of bevel or whole broadhead failure on modest size big game, let alone dangerous game. Heat treat and metal selection for broadhead applications is paramount and totally different than what makes for a good scalpel or knife. RLPFP, real life propensity for pass through. If your arrow system can hold together, then heat treat becomes important, as if the head shatters like glass from over heat treat per application or bends on bone, then the pass-through effort is further sabotaged by either the wrong metal or wrong processes or the wrong Rockwell hardness for hunting arrow projectile applications. Gunshot style butchering. Heat treat has no effect on gunshot style butchering other than ensuring the bevel does not chatter or head does not completely fail from overheat treat or bend from underheat treat. Plus minus BMA, bidirectional mechanical advantage, single bevels only. Appropriate heat treat is imperative only in ensuring bishoparchery.com BMA, bidirectional mechanical advantage, is not lost through broadhead failure or edge bevel chatter, but is not otherwise directly related to BMA, bidirectional mechanical advantage, in any way. OBED, onside bone energy dump, single bevels only. And this is a big deal. Onside bone energy dump is super important for a single bevel. Again, appropriate heat treat is imperative in ensuring BMA, bidirectional mechanical advantage, is not lost through broadhead failure or edge bevel chatter, but is not otherwise directly related to BMA or OBED energy dump in any other way. Unless the broadhead's overheat treat, where it fails, right? ASSB, Ashby style, single bevels only. Our bishoparchery.com metals, heat treat, bevel degrees, edge bevels, blade thickness, and geometries are purposefully engineered the opposite of Ashby Howard Hill style broadheads for over a decade now. It is most desirable for our heads to bend before breaking and not the other way around when struck with a 4-pound mini sledgehammer and a vise throughout the prototyping stage. A head should never shear off or bend on dangerous game, let alone shatter in targets or in big game. That is our best advertiser. When people go to Africa and hunt buffalo and their broadhead shatters, that is our best advertiser because they come back and buy our broadheads. HHS 3-1, Howard Hill style 3-1. Again, our bishoparchery.com broadheads are purposefully engineered the opposite of Ashby Howard Hill style broadheads. This is no knock on these guys, as they are both our heroes. At the same time, we are not going to engineer broadheads after the Ashby reports or Howard Hill's 3-1 heads, as we have been there and done that numerous times over a decade ago. It is ironic how many broadhead companies now emulate but never duplicate our long-standing broadhead designs. And then go put a seal on their webpage and give money. PTTC, propensity to tip curl. Many heads shatter or bend at the tip because they are overheat treated or they are constructed out of low shock resistant metal, or without mentioning any specific brands of broadheads, are not heat treated at all. You believe it or not, there's some broadheads out there, and one of the most popular ones is never heat treated. Crazy. These blunders lead to broadhead shatters or a bent tip or a bent broadhead on bone or even connective tissue. While no broadhead or arrow system is indestructible, we use different metrics including bishoparchery.com, edge bevel integrity continuum, and bishoparchery.com, BMA, bidirectional mechanical advantage, and our single bevels to shoot for totally different metrics than anybody else, including our copycatters that know how to emulate but never duplicate our steel-footed arrows and broadheads. SBSAAF, small broadhead surface area, arrow flight, Rockwell hardness, and type of heat treating process has no effect on the size of the surface area of the broadhead. Okay, and then that's it. And that's why there's a booklet. And if you go and download this, you'll see in green and red, and you'll see these visuals. So go put that in your cart. If there's a price, you pay the price and put it in there. But there's a good chance if you go over there, it'll be on sale for $0. And so you could download this to look at as well. I hope you enjoyed listening to the book. I can go through this appendix really quick. I'm going to run out of time here. I'm not too good with technology. Looks like I have about 5 minutes. So I can go through the appendix real quick. But again, I hope this helped you if you're driving for a car drive in your car, or I like listening to these types of things on my tractor, and things like that, like a podcast format style thing. But go check this out at Bishop Archery. Really quick, the appendix 1 is just the definitions, and it has all those definitions in there that you could just glance at and look at. Appendix 2, the EBI Continuum. It's basically a picture book version, caveman crib notes, and it doesn't explain the why, and it has a Ghostbusters sign, a no sign on 3-to-1 mechanical advantage, and some pretty, how do I say it, rudimentary levels of what I just read. Caveman crib notes, avoid double bevels less than 50 thousandths of an inch thick. Why? There's nothing there to support the bevel. Okay? And that'd be okay if you shave with them. We don't shave with them. We use them more like axes and splitting mauls and metal punches is what we ask them to do. 3-to-1 mechanical advantage, bad. Avoid single bevels less than 70 thousandths of an inch thick, because there's no possible way for the single bevel to, there's nothing supporting a single bevel. A single bevel is an awesome thing if you're going on a buffalo hunt, or to cut bone, breech bone, split bone. Do not make single bevels more like double bevels. Don't decrease the bevel degree till there's nothing left to pop open a bone split, because you want to shave your arm hair every day. Maybe shave your arm hair very carefully one time. Don't sue me if you cut yourself shaving your arm hair anymore. Whew. Caveman crib notes. Here you go. Double bevels less than 60-degree bevels. Bad. A 60-degree double bevel is nice. A lot of people try to turn those 3 blades you could lay on a flat stone into 44-degree bevels. Don't do that. It's edge bevel integrity that performs real-life cutting, not perceived sharpness. It's not sharpness. If it can't maintain sharpness by shooting it into your target, then you could sharpen it all day long. Your broadhead, and most broadheads, 99.9% of the broadheads on the market, are not engineered for edge bevel integrity. They're engineered for sharpness to sell to you. Caveman crib notes. Single bevels less than 40-degree bevels. Bad news. We read the Ashby report several times years ago. We made some 15-degree single bevels, 4-to-1 mechanical advantage. Thought, oh my God, these are going to be so awesome. You'd look at them and they'd break. And they don't pop bone better. They pop bone worse. And they don't fly better. There's more surface area. So it might look funny shooting a short broadhead out of a recurve or a longbow, but you got to ask yourself, Do you want to look good, or do you want to do real life arrow projectile cutting? And you do that with edge bevel integrity, at least with straight bevels. Now here it says straight edge bevel cutting equals bad. I'm not talking about straight edge bevel cutting in the sense of thick bladed non-mechanical cutting broadheads. There's a picture of a dollar, I think it's $1.99 razor blade that you could buy whenever you go to Home Depot. Maybe they're $2.99 after inflation or whatever. But makes horrible broadheads. So you got super thin blades, and you have 15 to 20 degree bevels, and yeah, they're going to do really, really good at cutting boxes and things like this. But these box cutters here, that's what we have been trying to make our broadheads like in our archery industry for decades, and it's bad news. Those blades like that would never hold up. Put it this way, if you could wear protective equipment and smash it with a sledgehammer and your bevel's gone, don't shoot at 50 to 500 feet per second at an animal, because real life cutting is edge bevel integrity, not perceived sharpness. And the edge bevel integrity continuum will show you the more edge bevel integrity you have and engineer into the broadhead, the less perceived sharpness you will have. There's no way getting around it. Caveman crib notes. Thin blades plus low degree bevels, yeah, equals high sharpness, because there's no metal around the bevel. It's so important. In Appendix 3, go download this thing. This is the Edge Bevel Integrity Continuum, copyright 2008-2024 by Dr. Sean A. Sanfrano, all rights reserved, and it's in green and red. And if you want to know the why, go back through what I just read to you. But look at this green and red and test it. When you look at the green and the red, so decrease 3-to-1 mechanical advantage, increase blade thickness, increase bevel degree, add planned static mechanical cutting, heat treat per type of metal for shock, and then you look at what that equals. It's the antithesis of a Howard Hill or Ashby style broadhead. And those guys are great. There's nothing wrong with those guys. But we've been chasing 3-to-1 as bow hunters. We've been chasing sharpness and saying we're unethical. We might be unethical because we're chasing sharpness of a broadhead that cannot have EBI in a target or in quiver foam. The sharpness doesn't matter. It can't maintain a sharpness when you put your arrow in your quiver. 3-to-1 mechanical advantage, and then all in red, it tells you the ideal broadhead. It's kind of like the ideal camouflage, all detailed, sold to us, real tree camouflages and everything, which are horrible. I'd rather have a Winona camo, a Vias camo, a ASAT camo, compared to a detailed real tree camo. These broadheads are sold to us with 3-to-1 mechanical advantage and sharpness as the metric. And it's no good. It's no good because you cannot have EBI. So go check it out. Download it. You can agree or disagree with me. You can shoot anything you want. You don't need to buy anything from me, because I could literally build things out of stone points in a stave of wood better than what we can buy in Bass Pro Shops and in Walmart or wherever you get your archery gear, because we're chasing all the wrong things, from bow cams to you name it. So I hope this at least entertained you. Go download that thing, and I hope this was entertaining to you at the very least. Check it out, bishoparchery.com. This ebook is currently free for a limited time, so make sure you go over there and download one today so you can see it, all the visuals in the red and in the green. Thanks.